whether it is, well, any industry. And I would be interested to know whether others among our witnesses here today have sought to pursue claims under that program. I understand you did, Dr. Hooker, correct?
That is correct, Senator.
For some 16 years.
16 years, that's correct.
And you got no relief.
We had absolutely no relief whatsoever. Neither were we allowed oral arguments.
So maybe we ought to look at this system. You know,
Agreed.
I am not suggesting what should be done about it. I don't know whether you have legislation, Mr. Chairman, on this program.
We're still in the exploratory phase here.
Okay. So, you know, I'm a lawyer. I'm very result-oriented. And I am heartbroken to hear these stories. And it makes me want to do something. So I'm not promising anything. So you might want to hold your applause.
How about we ban pharmaceutical ads on TV? I'll co-sponsor that bill.
I've advocated it, and you have a co-sponsor. Remember that I'm the state attorney general who helped to lead the lawsuit against big tobacco when that industry denied that smoking caused cancer or any other disease. In fact, some tobacco manufacturers actually advertised that it was good for you to smoke. And they knew at the time, talk about destruction of records, that tobacco addiction, nicotine addiction, and smoking caused cancer. They knew it from their own experiments. They hid it, and then they actually destroyed records. And that is one of the reasons why we won that set of lawsuits. When people said no one could ever win, that in effect, they were immune. I don't really think any industry should be immune from legal responsibility. And I'm not going to go into the other industries because I don't want to muddy the waters here. But I would be interested in looking at whether reforms are appropriate and whether, for example, the injury table ought to include other kinds of problems that allegedly are caused, and I use the word allegedly as a lawyer, by problems with vaccines. I am not a scientist. And so I really can't leap to any sort of conclusions here. And that's why in courtrooms we have expert testimony. And lawyers are reprimanded if they testify. So I'm not doing it here. But I do think that we need to be responsible in the way we talk about this issue, not to belittle any claims on one side or the other. And I just want to ask you, Ms. Murata, whether you have talked to families or individuals who've been affected by measles, whether you have found they've been discouraged from using the vaccine, and what you advise them to do.
Thank you for your question, Senator Blumenthal. So at Vaccinate Your Family, we do work with patient advocates that have been impacted like mine, like my story. One particular measles story comes to top of mind for me. His name is Joshua. At the age of 30, he caught measles. He thought he had been vaccinated. He had asked his mother when he got sick, "Hey, Mom, was I vaccinated?" And he found out that he wasn't. He caught measles at his sister's college graduation and ended up in the hospital. Thankfully, he survived, but he had a really long road to recovery. So what we're seeing right now with outbreaks of measles is obviously very concerning to me as a parent. We again want people to have the right information about how they can protect themselves and their families. I don't know personally of any story where someone was discouraged from reporting an injury, so I can't speak to that.
Thank you. My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting on this hearing. And, a father of 5, 3 grandkids. In fact, my daughter's visiting me today and last night in D.C. Normally, I get an alarm clock, but this morning I got a cute little 18-month-old face in front of me to wake me up. So to all of you, I can't even, you say that you can relate. I can't. I can't even imagine what you're going through, and we have to figure out a way forward. So let me just, I think it's important, though, that we look at where we were to understand what we need to do to go forward. So I think most Americans expect that when you get on a plane, you buy a car, you get on an elevator, you eat a meal, that there's a standard of care that that company used, and if they didn't use a standard of care, that you have a path to get some sort of compensation for the lack of effort. I think most of us kind of expect that. So when we say anything is safe, there's nothing that's 100% safe, impossible. But what's interesting about this industry is that the government has decided that this particular industry gets a free pass, that this particular industry doesn't have to be liable to anybody. And to our ranking member, I'm glad that you're interested in these things. I think that's fantastic. But President Biden, or the auto pen, extended immunity for these pharmaceutical companies for 5 years on the way out the door. How does that happen? On December 11th, 2024, with no public notice, snap of an auto pen, liability is extended through 2029. So you look at it, you go, well, how does all this happen? And I think we also have to recognize that there was a lot of people who, for example, I'm sure for you, Dr. Sullivan, for you, Dr. Hooker, for many of you, when you even said, hey, is this a problem, you were banned on social media. No, okay, let's say that's not the worst thing that can happen to you in the world. But then the Biden administration then took it further and said, you can't go to work and make a living because your employer must either force you to be vaccinated, force you to reveal your public medical information, or you're unable to provide for your family. That's a very different thing, and yet complete silence. And so if we're going to go forward, I think we have to acknowledge where we were in the past, because what happened during those years was something that this country's never seen, a slide towards a government that's supposed to derive its power from the consent of the governed, was terminating people, working with social media companies that says, if Ms. Tommy, if you put this post on, you can put a post that says, I think Senator Marino's tie is ugly. Totally fine. This was the FBI knocks on your door. You're deleted from social media. The White House was bringing tech companies to the White House saying, hey, we're going to work together to squash any dissent. This goes far beyond an informed decision that a parent has to make. It's tough, by the way. I tell my kids this all the time, my 2 daughters that have kids, being a mom or dad is hard. You have to make decisions for another human being. But where's the relationship with the government saying this is what you will do? And if you don't do these things, there's going to be severe consequences. So I'm all for going forward, but there has to be humility of looking backwards over the period of time in COVID and realize that our government did real damage to real people, from closing schools to forced vaccinations to the shunning public shaming of people. So to my Democrat colleagues, I just, look, I get it. I was a private citizen up until 6 months ago. But what motivated me to come here to Washington, D.C. to serve this country was because our government lost its ever-living mind over the last 4 or 5 years. So on a go-forward basis, there's some obvious things. Why don't we treat the pharmaceutical industry like any other business? You make a car that kills somebody, you're liable. Now, by the way, as a former car dealer, driving a car is safe. Okay? But will a car have an accident? Of course. Flying is the safest thing you can do. But are there accidents? Of course. But why are we exempting certain industries? And of course, then you start thinking, well, what's the money that goes into it? When you go to make a decision for your child, is a doctor actually being a fair arbiter? Or are they thinking, hey, there's a pharmaceutical rep that's going to pay me based on how many vaccines I prescribed, how many prescriptions I fill? That's a whole different world. And we've seen it not just on vaccines, but, you know, in the family that controlled Purdue Pharma, they're on a beach somewhere, and they're billionaires. And they left tens of thousands of people in my state, Ohio, dead. Where's the justice for those people? So if we're going to do this, Mr. Chairman, to our ranking member, we need to get serious about understanding that there's a lot of entanglements between special interest groups, lobbyists, with zero accountability. Because finding Purdue Pharma did nothing for the Sackler family. Sackler family are still living a great life. And the people who profited severely from the COVID-19 vaccine are living a great life. They're not sitting here like all of you having a different conversation. So if we're going to do something, the North Star has got to be medical freedom. I get to decide. I get to decide what's good for me and my family with proper information. And if I'm given improper information, just like in any other industry, there's got to be accountability. And these industries that produce bad behavior, the executives, the people who charge those people to do these bad things have got to feel personal repercussions. Because if that's not the guidepost in which we do this, then all we're going to do is have wasted these great people's time. So I'll end where I started. I'm hoping that, Chairman, what comes out of this is actual progress. Because when I hear your stories, it breaks my heart, and I know it's a life sentence for all of you. This isn't something where tomorrow you snap your fingers and your emotions leave you. It's going to be with you. I can see the pain in each and every one of you. And I'm hoping my colleagues see that pain and that we actually move the ball forward to get something done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Marino. So Ms. Tommy, when I'm watching the video and I watch the one mom who's